So problem number 20 says that given the equation y is equal to 1/4 x minus 1, that I want to do two different things. First, I want to write the equation using function notation, and then second, I want to find f of negative 24. Writing this in function notation is not too difficult. Instead of y, I'll write f of x because f of x is the equivalent to y. I'll write my equal sign, and then I'll finish off my equation. 1/4x minus 1, and I'm done. Now to find f of negative 24. This means that when the value of x is a negative 24, I want to find out what is the value of y. And so I will take the 24 and plug it in for my x value. I'll write f of x is equal to 1/4, a parentheses, negative 24, close parentheses, and then a minus 1. When I do this math out, 1/4 times negative 24 is going to be negative 6. Negative 6 minus 1 will give me negative 7. F of x then is going to be equal to negative 7 when I am trying to find f of negative 24, but the better way to write this would be f of negative 24 is equal to negative 7. And then I am done on part B. Moving on to question 21. Given f of x is equal to x plus 6/3 and g of x is equal to negative x minus 5, it wants me to find out what is f of negative 3 minus g of negative 1. The key here is that these functions are labeled. I have my f functions and I have my g functions. I will only input an f value into f functions and a g value into g functions. So in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I will take this negative 3 from the f of negative 3 and I will replace the x in my f of x equation so that f of negative 3 is equal to a negative 3 plus 6/3. I can put this into Desmos and it will solve it for me. But if you want to solve it out by hand, negative 3 plus 6 is 3, and 3 divided by 3 is a 1. Now let's do the g of x side. G of negative 1 will be equal to a negative sign. Then I write a parentheses, and then I put a negative 1. I have to remember to put that extra negative sign. A negative 1 is actually a positive 1. Positive 1 minus 5 is going to give me negative 4. So I now have my f of negative 3 value and my g of negative 1 value. Now I need to take the f of negative 3 value and subtract the g of negative 1 value. Again, very important that I put that extra minus sign. 1 minus a minus 4 will give me 5. And that will be my answer. Make sure you don't lose those minus signs. They're very important. And again, can't emphasize this enough. Please, please, please make sure, put these in parentheses when you substitute them in. You'll notice even I didn't do that at first. It's vital for making sure you don't lose track of minus signs. Remember, you're only substituting for the letter. You're not substituting for the sign in front of the letter. Now the last problem, you rent a kayak for $9 an hour, and it wants to know if you spend between $81 and $306, what the domain of the function will end up being. This is the opposite of the word problem that we had a little earlier on. Remember, f of x is going to be equal to, in this case, $9 times how many hours that I happen to work. So my domain is going to be dependent on what my total number of dollars will end up being. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take $81 and I'm going to substitute it in for the entirety of f of x. Remember, that $81, that's a a range value, and the 306, that's a range value. So instead of putting that number 81 in for x, I'm going to put it in for f of x, so that I have 81 is equal to 9x. When I solve that out, I will get that x is equal to 9. That's a domain value. I'm going to repeat this process again with $306. Again, I will substitute 306 not for x, but for f of x. I will write 306 is equal to 9x. I will do the math on this. When I did this problem, I attempted to do the math in my head, realized that it was late at night and that I needed to think differently about that, and so I put it in a calculator. That's a good lesson for all of us. You should put it in a calculator as well. When you take 306 and you divide it by 9, you will end up with 34. Now I need to set up the domain of my function. I know what my lowest possible domain value is, 9, and my highest possible domain value, 34. Knowing this information, let's go ahead and set up a set notation. I have my x with my less than signs bracketing either side of it. In this case, it can seem a little vague as to whether or not you are supposed to include $81 and $306. For the sake of this problem, I decided that those values themselves were acceptable answers, so I am going to go ahead and put equals to signs underneath the inequalities. If they did not want you to do that, I feel like they would specify. So I will go ahead and put those equal to signs underneath. And then I need on the left to list my lowest domain value, the lowest possible amount, which is going to be, in this case, 9. And then I need to list my highest domain amount, which in this case will be 34.